In all the most popular manuals of Freemasonry, and in its standard works of the highest authority and merit, there are 4 well-authenticated claims set up on behalf of that institution, as follows. First, that it is a religious philosophy, or a system of religious science. Second, that it was revived in its present outward form in 1717. Third, that all its ceremonies, symbols, and the celebrated legend of 𝗖𝗆𝗲𝗏 in the Master Mason's degree were directly borrowed from the ancient mysteries, or the secret worship of Baal, 𝗖𝗆𝗲𝗏𝗱𝗏𝗏𝗏. And fourth, that a strict obedience to its precepts and obligations is all that is necessary to free man from sin, and to secure for him a happy immortality. The design of this work, then, is to discuss these claims in a clear, simple, and intelligible manner, and to demonstrate beyond the possibility of dispute or doubt, on the part of any Freemason, that the Masonic system, as it exists today, is precisely the same religious philosophy, and the same form of secret worship, that used to be taught and practiced in honor of the god of nature in the old temples of paganism. Freemasonry is far too serious a matter for any man to assume its villainous obligations without due reflection, for, once you have crossed the threshold of the lodge room, divested of your own clothing, and wearing the habiliments of the order, and when once you become, as it were, bound by the cable toe of Satan to the altar of Baal, there is no place for after repentance, though, like Esau of old, you may seek it carefully with tears. Living or dead, Freemasonry will never give you up. The law of Romanism is, once a priest, always a priest, and so it is in Masonry, once a Mason, always a Mason. That is to say, Masonry and the secret worship of paganism are one and the same. And as it is claimed for Masonry that it has been instituted as a vehicle to preserve and transmit the dealings of the Most High with his people in the infancy of the world, therefore, it follows that the debasing, licentious worship of Baal and Osiris in Samaria and Egypt was the true religion of God, and consequently that the Bible is worse than an old wife's fable. And hence, unquestionably, the Masonic philosophy must be one in form and substance with those various systems of divine worship, the ancient mysteries, with which it was originally incorporated, and so true is it that Freemasonry and the ancient mysteries are identical in every feature, and so persistently do all our Masonic teachers insist upon establishing this identity beyond any possibility of dispute, that past Grand Master 𝗍𝗁𝗍𝗶𝗁𝗍 affirms of the Northeast Caller ceremony in the entered apprentice degree, that it is the only one of all the ceremonies of initiation which cannot be traced back to any pagan origin. Every ceremony through which the Masonic candidate is made to pass on the night of his initiation, from the time he enters the preparation room, the upper chamber of the building where the lodge is held, until he again reaches the sidewalk, the sworn slave of Masonry, have all been borrowed from the secret worship of the sun god of the ancient pagans, and that the religious philosophy of speculative Freemasonry and the religious philosophy of the Baal worship of Samaria are identically the same. The symbols of the entered apprentice degree, to which our attention must now be mainly directed, are 9 in number, having direct allusion to the form of the lodge, its supports, covering, furniture, ornaments, lights, jewels, situation and dedication, and, like all the preceding ceremonies of initiation, every one of these emblems, without any exception, has been borrowed from the ancient mysteries, or secret worship of Baal, and their former position in that idolatrous system is distinctly pointed out in the monitors and standard works of the institution. It could not be possible for Masonry to establish a clearer coincidence, nor could any stronger proof be adduced to identify the secret religious philosophy of the Masonic system with the ancient secret sun or Baal worship of pagan mythology. Mosaic pavements, consisting of stones of various colors, so disposed as to represent different shapes or forms, were common in the temples of the ancients, i.e., in the temple of 𝗧𝗏𝗱𝗏𝗏𝗏 says that they represented the variegated face of the earth, in the places where the ancients formerly held their religious assemblies. Manual of the Lodge, page 49. The Masonic ritual prescribes that every lodge must be situated due east and west, and this custom, like all the other customs, symbols and ceremonies of the institution, has been derived from the situation of pagan temples of the ancient sun or Baal worship, as is evident from the following explanation. How strangely anxious the teachers of Freemasonry must be to establish the identity of Freemasonry with the ancient mysteries, when it is imperatively required that even the very lodge rooms of the order must be situated due east and west, because of a similar custom which obtained in the situation of the pagan temples where the secret worship of Baal is to be formally practiced. The point within a circle, lodge dedications, refers to the sun, borrowed from the mysteries, represents the phallus or 𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 of pagan worship, condemned by St. Paul, supported by Masonic ministers, the symbol of Masonic licentiousness. From the unanimous testimony of all its accredited teachers elicited thus far, while examining its different elements, it has been demonstrated as clearly as it is in the power of language to make it, that both in whole and in part, in its outward form, and in its inward secret working, the Masonic institution is an exact counterpart of the ancient mysteries, and that all the ceremonies, symbols, emblems and rites, which are now employed with so much pretended reverence and mock solemnity in conferring its heathenish degrees, are identical in every single feature with the initiatory rites and ceremonies that used to be formally practiced in the introduction of candidates into the secret worship of Baal or Osiris. The point within a circle is not only a pagan symbol, referring to the sun god of Masonic worship from first to last, and borrowed directly from the ancient initiations of the old Baal mythology, but it is in fact as near a true representation of that lascivious idol, the 𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 of Moab, as common decency will permit the grand high priests of Masonry to represent it in books intended for general circulation. This and a great deal more concerning this vicious symbol will appear evident from the following Masonic testimony. In the Symbolism of Freemasonry, by 𝗧𝗿𝗱𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗁, page 112, we read, perfectly to understand this symbol, I must refer, as a preliminary matter, to the worship of the phallus, a peculiar modification of sun worship, which prevailed to a great extent among the nations of antiquity. The phallus was a sculptured representation of the membrum virile, or male, organ of generation, and the worship of it is said to have originated in Egypt, where, after the murder of Osiris by Typhon, which is symbolically to be explained as the destruction or deprivation of the sun's light by night, Isis, his wife, as the symbol of nature, in the search for his mutilated body, is said to have found all the parts except the organ of generation, which myth is simply symbolic of the fact that the sun having set, its fecundating and invigorating power had ceased. The phallus, therefore, as the symbol of the male generative principle, was very universally venerated among the ancients, and that too as a religious rite. He is supposed by some commentators to be the god mentioned under the name of 𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 in the Book of Numbers, as having been worshipped by the idolatrous Moabites. The language of this extract is so very plain that any person of even average intelligence can readily understand its meaning, but our Masonic teachers, not willing, perhaps, that any mistake should be made in relation to this matter. This monstrous abomination, as we are informed in the foregoing extracts, was the phallus of the old pagan worship, and which we are positively assured is now represented in every Masonic lodge throughout the world, under the figure of the point within a circle. Being supposed to be a part of Baal, or the sun god, it was sometimes also called 𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆, and was always and everywhere worshipped with licentious worship. This was the chief deity of the Moabites, as we read in the 25th chapter of Numbers, and it was because the men of Israel joined themselves to this abominable idol, and took part in its wicked worship, indulging in the most flagrant licentiousness in honor of it, that 24,000 of them were slain. And yet, notwithstanding all this, the ministers of our churches, those who claim to be commissioned by the Lord Jesus Christ to preach the gospel of the grace of God, and to lead men from darkness to light, and the very representatives of that same Apostle Paul. These men, I say, go into those dark dens of infamy and sin, called Masonic lodges, join themselves to this very same 𝗧𝗏𝗶𝗏𝗏, solemnly swear to maintain and support the wicked religious philosophy of which it forms an important part, use whatever influence they possess in inducing others to follow their example, and when questioned on the subject by even one of their own congregation, they either give a haughty, defiant reply, or else positively lie to hide their wickedness. We are now done with the lesser mysteries, or those initiatory rites, which constitute the first section of symbolic masonry. We have examined all its ceremonies, have investigated all its symbols, and the fearful truth has been made only too apparent, that every part of Freemasonry emphatically proclaims its pagan origin, and that the god of its worship and religious philosophy is the old sun god of the ancient mysteries, the Osiris of the Egyptians, or the Baal of the idolatrous Israelites, sublime degree of Master Mason. We read as follows in the Book of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite, pages 355 and 356, MP my brethren, the power of darkness has prevailed over the Prince of Light. The earth mourns, and is wrinkled with frost. All nature laments, and we share the common sorrow. Excellent Senior Warden, let prayers be offered up in the tabernacle for the return of light and the reascension of the sun. Senior Warden, most puissant, our ancient taskmasters on the banks of the Nile mourn for Osiris, the Chaldeans lament for Baal, or Baal, and the Phoenicians for Tammuz. We, like our ancient masters, weep for Osiris, the type to us of the sun, of light, of life. Weep, my brethren, for Osiris. Weep for light lost, and life departed, and the good and the beautiful oppressed by evil. This from such high authority proves beyond any power of denial that the dead candidate in the Masonic Lodge and the Osiris, or Baal of the Mysteries, are one and the same characters. And because the Egyptian sun worshippers join their priests in a melancholy procession, singing a doleful ditty in commemoration of the death of Osiris, so the Masonic fraternity, or the modern Baal worshippers, in imitation of their ancient brethren, join their priests in a similar procession, and for precisely the same purpose. This, and this only, is the true interpretation of the Masonic drama. Through the fecundating power of the sun's rays, nature, as it were, becomes pregnant in spring and summer, and brings forth in autumn, and hence in the pagan mythology of Egypt, the earth, or more properly nature, was represented as a female and a goddess, and designated by the name of Isis, while the fecundating and fertilizing power of the sun was represented as a male, and the chief deity, or the ruler and governor of nature, and was called Osiris or Baal. Even the symbol of corn, wine and oil, used in all Masonic consecrations, and which is also mentioned in the ritual of the second degree, as referring to the wages of a fellow craft, or to Masonic truth, is borrowed from the old Baal worship of the mysteries, and is alluded to by Hosea, when reproving the Israelitish church for her wicked idolatries. For she did not know that I gave her corn, and wine, and oil, and multiplied her silver and gold, which she prepared for Baal. We have demonstrated beyond the possibility of a doubt or contradiction, that Freemasonry, both in whole and in part, is literally and truly the secret worship of Baal, or the sun god, as that worship used to be practiced among the old pagan nations, and that Romanism is its exact counterpart. In a word, we have discovered, beyond a question, that Freemasonry is the vile, miserable, idolatrous old pagan beast, and that popery is the very express image of that beast. Take away the sacrifice of the Mass from Romanism, and you destroy it. Strike out the sacrifice of Hiram from Freemasonry, and there is nothing left. Both are, undoubtedly, pagan ceremonies, performed by pagan priests in pagan temples, with altars that are pagan, lighted candles as a pagan, lustration that are pagan, and with the chief priests of both systems decked out in the gaudy vestments of paganism.